Coming up on Bridge City News, Alberta Premier Jason Kenney discusses how our province has been winning the battle against the novel coronavirus. The City of Lethbridge is adding more protection for transit riders and drivers in the fight against COVID-19 by installing protective shields in their buses. And the NHL is returning. We hear from the Calgary Flames about what that may look like for their club.
Your nation. Your province. Your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney took to Facebook earlier today to tout our province's record in the fight against the novel coronavirus.
We as a province have managed to implement some of the least restrictive public health orders in the Western world, certainly amongst the least restrictive in Canada, and yet have had far stronger results than other large population jurisdictions in combating the spread of COVID-19. As of yesterday, we have tested over the past 11 weeks some 6,900 total positive cases on 243,000 tests. That is to say, about 2.8% of those who've been tested for COVID-19 tested positive. To date, 6,048 of those 6,900 cases have since recovered, and so about 88% of those who tested positive have happily recovered.
The province says that 6,106 Albertans have now recovered from the COVID-19 virus. Alberta's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Dina Hinshaw, says there is still, however, 679 active cases in the province.
This is the fewest number of active cases in Alberta since March 30th. Of course, we must not forget that this virus is still impacting many people across the province. Currently, 43 people are hospitalized with COVID-19, with 4 of those admitted to ICUs. In the last 24 hours, out of 3,168 new test results, there were 25 new cases. Sadly, I must report that there are 2 new deaths today. I would like to extend my sympathies to all those who have lost loved ones during this time.
Alberta's Government House Leader says Energy Minister Sonia Savage was just stating the obvious when she said the COVID-19 pandemic is a great time to build pipelines. In an interview last week, Savage said the reason is simple, because public health regulations limit protests to just 15 people. House Leader Jason Nixon says she was rightly pointing out that some people have dedicated themselves to stopping Alberta's energy resources from getting to market. Nixon adds pipelines are necessary for our province's future, and the UCP government will continue to stand up for our province's largest industry. The City of Lethbridge has made new protective shields for transit drivers to protect against COVID-19. As Micah Quinn explains, the shields originally cost a pretty penny, but now they're being made a lot more affordably.
This is the new normal for Lethbridge bus drivers. Protective shields are being installed to try to prevent the transmission of COVID-19.
They're not intended to provide protection towards open-air assault. This is to provide protections towards COVID-19 and getting ready for when we go back to regular fixed transit routes.
Galliana says the overall cost for each shield is $100.
The solution that we have right now, we utilize Lexan, steel tubing, piping, and miscellaneous items like magnets and latches to secure the door. It was a little bit more about the design than the cost.
Lethbridge Transit is making sure that they are continuing with the reservation system for buses, and they are going to implement all of the protective shields before regular transit starts up again. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Lethbridge police need our help identifying a male vandal. Over the past couple of months, a man has been spray painting BB20 or board, B-O-R-D, on buildings in the downtown core. The damage is now spread to properties on the west and north sides. To date, 23 businesses and buildings have been vandalized. If you have any information that can help, please call Crime Stoppers right away at 1-800-222-8477. Good news for those who enjoy visiting Waterton Lakes National Park. Visitor access and basic services are set to resume on June 1st. Some day-use areas, including Cameron Bay and Emerald Bay, will be available, including washroom facilities and shelters. The Red Rock Parkway will be open for hiking and cycling. Many trails will be open as well. The camping facilities, however, will remain closed until at least June 21st. Interpretive activities and public events are also suspended until further notice. When the thought of large corporations comes to mind, with some people, there's a perception of greed. In our next story, video journalist Naveen Day says the COVID-19 response efforts have given some companies opportunities to offer relief where it's needed the most.
For some auto insurance policyholders, you may have received an unexpected check in the mail. Alberta policyholders with certain companies are receiving rebates in the mail due to less risk on the road. For example, companies like Allstate Insurance have allocated more than $30 million as part of their stay-at-home payment.
We never intended on keeping the money. We knew it was just a matter of time giving it back to our clients. We just needed to figure out how and when. On top of that, we've also done payment deferrals, free legal advice for any of our clients, and it doesn't even have to be insurance related. We're also extending coverage to Canadians that need to do other sources of employment with their vehicle, whether it be skip the dishes, delivering medication, doing essential services. That way, we're actually extending at no extra cost to any of our clients' auto coverage. This is not a program that any of our clients had to sign up for. They didn't have to be in the know. We automatically had them registered because it's the right thing to do.
It is not just insurance companies that are offering a hand. Tenants who are having trouble with rent payments or in isolation are receiving help as well.
What we've offered is some flexible payment terms around either a semi-monthly or a weekly payment, which often ties in with any CERB payments or EI payments that people might be receiving at the moment. And I'm really proud of our regional teams as well. We've put together task forces within our communities, so if someone reaches out and they're having a problem, such as their ability to go and get food, we've got people that are willing to go and collect groceries on people's behalf. If someone's self-isolating and they've got a pet, for example, we're offering, a dog walking service. And we're also doing a lot more resident wellness checks. So making sure that particularly our elderly clients, if we're in the building, we're just taking a stop, taking a pause, knocking on the door and asking people how they're doing.
For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
The NHL is set to make its return. League Commissioner Gary Bettman says teams will return for a training camp in July, and we could see play in August. The league announced yesterday its plans for a 24-team return-to-play playoff format. The Calgary Flames will be taking on the Winnipeg Jets in the opening round, while the Edmonton Oilers will be facing off against the Chicago Blackhawks. The Flames responded to the news that they will be back playing again very soon.
We want to do whatever we can to play as players, obviously, to go through a regular season and play 70 games and put all that time in, and those ups and downs, that adversity we've been through all year. You want to have a chance to be rewarded for that at the end of the season.
We're going to do what we normally would do to prepare for a series, and then the most important thing is, from the information we get out of watching Winnipeg and knowing our own team, what is the best plan for us moving forward in order to make sure that we're effective in the way that we play against them.
I can tell you, knowing these players, they're competitive people. They everything they do, they compete in, and so it'll be new, it'll be uncharted territory. But I think once the puck's dropped, and you got somebody in a red jersey and somebody in not a red jersey, there's going to be competition. It's going to be exciting.
The NHL also announced plans for the lottery draft, which will take place on June 26th. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman says he hopes this is a step back to some sort of a new normal.
In this incredibly unique, difficult, and trying time, we hope that this is a step back towards normalcy. Obviously, everything we're focused on starts with health and safety and people's well-being, but we think we've been able to work very collaboratively with the Players Association and the players to come up with a framework that is fair and has integrity and should result in a terrific competitive playoffs and ultimately the awarding of the best trophy in all the sports.
If you could nominate anyone in the community, someone who's made a big difference, who would it be? The Community Builders Award will be given out by Lethbridge MP Rachel Harder to a number of deserving recipients.
We've received quite a few nominations thus far, and they continue to come in every day. So, to date, we've received stories about physio clinics that, took an emergency patient. We've heard about nurses who are going above and beyond. We've heard about neighbors who are taking care of others by offering to pick up groceries or stop at the pharmacy. We've had a few children nominate their parents. We've also had, people who have nominated local businesses in the region for the tremendous work that they're doing in the community, and again, just making it a better place.
Everyone who's nominated will receive a personalized certificate of appreciation from Lethbridge MP Rachel Harder. Secret Meal Heroes was started by Lethbridge women who wanted to bring the community together and spread joy through food. The idea of the group is to make a meal basket for a randomly picked secret meal hero. You would then drop off the meal at someone's doorstep to brighten their day.
And I just started thinking how food is such a universal need, and a lot of us are struggling for it right now. And I thought, why not make one where we drop off meals to each other that either we need or is on a wish list of ours, and build that connection and help feed each other one meal at a time. It may be a simple thing to say, but truly every act of kindness does make a difference, and I'm a strong believer in that.
Lacombe also encourages people to dress up as a hero when you deliver your meal to help put a big smile on someone's face. A woman lost her eye after a parasite found lurking in tap water became stuck behind her contact lens. BCN's Loris Alexander explains that 31-year-old Sam Hart had a heavy price to pay for missing some of the fine print.
Sam Hart runs a doggy daycare in Lethbridge.
I get covered in hair, spit, fur. That's hair. I get covered in everything, and I come home and I wash my face or I jump in the shower.
Hart says she followed protocol when it came to her contact lenses.
When I got my contacts, I read the boxes, I followed what I was taught, and I was never told why or what was in the water. I was told to not wear contacts in water or I could lose one. And I was like, oh, well, if I close my eyes in water when I wash my face, I should be okay. And I didn't know that there's parasites, bacteria, viruses, and fungus all in tap water.
On Canada Day in 2018, Hart says it looked like she had pink eye.
I woke up the next morning and my right eye was not okay. It was nearly swollen shut. It was so painful. I couldn't even keep it open. I was totally blind in both eyes. And we didn't know if I would get sight back, which is really scary.
Some of these organisms are very difficult to grow in the lab, and it can be quite confusing. And so sometimes we almost have to treat for different possibilities. I think in her case there was some thoughts of could this be a fungal infection? There were still thoughts about maybe it could be a viral infection early on, but that was sort of ruled out. And then the one that we're most concerned about is one called acanthamoeba, which is the one that can be found in tap water. And I think that is what Samantha had. Unfortunately, it caused a devastating infection in her eyes. She ended up getting a corneal transplant in her right eye, and that eye is doing well. Her left eye also needed a corneal transplant, and then that transplant failed, and she needed another transplant, and she's still having ongoing issues with her eyes and her vision, unfortunately.
I didn't know what was in the water, and if I would have known what was in the water, I would have treated everything so much differently.
For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe responded to concerns from some rural residents about the decision to suspend emergency services in 12 rural hospitals. Health officials say the move was to prepare for possible COVID-19 surges.
With the number of active cases so low in much of the province, a number of people have voiced concerns about the temporary closure of emergency rooms in 12 rural facilities. I would say today that I share those concerns. I understand that our health system has had to make some what are very difficult decisions to prepare for the potential and possible surge of COVID-19 patients in our hospitals in communities across Saskatchewan. We have to be ready. But thanks to the actions of Saskatchewan people, our province has been able to avoid the kind of pressure in our hospital system that we have seen in other places of this nation and other areas of the world. As a result, in addition to having the opportunity to reopen our portions of our Saskatchewan economy, we are also restarting elective surgeries and some other procedures that were paused to prepare for the COVID-19 healthcare delivery response.
Saskatchewan currently has 634 confirmed cases of COVID-19, along with 8 deaths. Close to 500 people have now recovered from the virus. BC Provincial Health Officer Dr. Bonnie Henry says she's pleased that her province appears to be flattening the curve when it comes to the coronavirus. There were just 11 new cases there yesterday. Henry also says she's pleased that Vancouver remains in the running as a possible NHL hub city, but says she will not bend health rules to accommodate the games.
We were quite excited to hear that Vancouver apparently is still in the running, which is good news. I would love to have hockey, but we have been very clear, and the Premier has been very clear, that we're not bending the rules in any way that would put what we have achieved here in BC at risk. So I've yet to see a plan. I'm happy to see what we can do, but we won't be changing rules that would put anybody at risk or would undo the good work that we've done here so far in BC.
So far, just over 2,100 people have recovered from the novel coronavirus in British Columbia. A recent report about the condition of long-term care facilities in Ontario came out, and it does not paint a pretty picture. One of our political reporters, Brian Lilly, says the disturbing report from the military was given to the Ontario government and cites a lot of areas that need cleaning up.
Patients in one place allowed to wander. COVID-positive patients allowed to get up out of their rooms and wander the home. In another home, they had big fans in the hallways blowing around, which could spread COVID-19. Majority of medication at the ward level expired, meaning, according to this report, people getting expired medication for months. Low levels of disinfection had been going on. In the middle of a pandemic, they were not disinfecting the rooms, buildup of fecal material in many rooms. It goes on and on and on.
Catch the full interview with political reporter Brian Lilly discussing issues with our country's long-term care homes. That's coming up in the second half of our show. Roman Catholic Masses will be allowed to resume in person beginning next month. The Roman Catholic bishops of Alberta say churches, however, must follow strict guidelines developed by a task force of priests and medical experts. Among other things, no more than 50 people can take part, including clergy. People must also sit 2 meters apart and sanitize their hands when entering or leaving a church. Catholic churches remain closed when the province allowed places of worship to reopen on May 15th, and an archbishop says it may take more time for parishes to accommodate all of the changes. Meanwhile, the state of California has released new guidelines that allow houses of worship to reopen while minimizing the spread of the coronavirus. Some church leaders, however, say they're in no rush to resume in-person services that require masks, social distancing, and frequent cleaning.
I kind of thought those restrictions were kind of tough for the church to be able to do it. I get it. We want to keep our parishioners safe, and I believe that with all my heart. But at the same time, my goodness, the restrictions are so tough.
In the name of Jesus, I thank you.
Well, it's going to be a tremendous difference than what we're used to, because we gather together, we like to hug, we like to shake hands, and we like to embrace one another. I mean, that's all about showing the love of God with one another. The way we come back together will not be the same way that we left. We will have to have a new paradigm with church, coming to church, having services.
We don't need to be in a rush. There's no rush to meet back in buildings in a global pandemic when we know many of our members are the highest at risk of contracting the virus and dying from this virus. A faith leader needs to lead the congregation away from harm and not rush into harm.
We had a little bit of moisture again today, but the clouds should be clearing. Complete weather details with a look at the record high and lows for this day are coming up. We had kind of a mixed bag today, didn't we? Some clouds, rain, and then the clearing sky. More sunshine and warmer temperatures are on the horizon. Jeanette Rocher is here now with a complete look at the weather forecast. Jeanette?
Yeah, some gorgeous weather ahead of us, finally. Tonight, it looks like we're going to have a mix of sun and cloud. There is a slight risk of some frost this evening, so if you have some plants or flowers on your deck, you might want to move them inside. Overnight low is 3 degrees. Into tomorrow, lots of sunshine, clearing, high of 21 degrees, and the overnight low of 9 degrees. It's going to be much the same for the rest of the week, that 5-day forecast. Look at Friday, high of 25 with sunshine. Saturday and Sunday, beautiful, beautiful days. Sunny skies with a high of 26 for Saturday, 25 is the high for Sunday, 25 and 24 are the highs for Monday and Tuesday, with a mix of sun and cloud for both of those days. So we're definitely into those mid to upper 20s, which is beating that high, the average high for this time of year, which is 20. The overnight lows on average are 6. The high temperature on this day was back in 1986. It was 31 degrees, and the chilliest day was -2. That was in 2005. That sun rose this morning at 5:32 a.m. and it's going to bed this evening at 9:25 p.m., giving us right around 16 hours of daylight. As we take a look at tomorrow's highs across the nation, the West Coast, a mix of sun and cloud in both Victoria and Vancouver, highs of 22 in Victoria, 21 in Vancouver. 19 is the high for both Edmonton and Calgary tomorrow under sunny skies. And similar conditions for the rest of the prairies as we look at Saskatchewan. Saskatoon's high 17, 19 in Regina, sunshine expected in both of those regions. A chance of showers tomorrow afternoon in Winnipeg with a high of 15 degrees. And as we move further east into central Canada, very, very hot weather, high humidity as well. There's a heat warning in effect for this whole region. Toronto's high 26. They could see some showers, mix of sun and cloud for both Ottawa and Montreal. Highs of 30 and 31. That high humidex, though, that's above 30, sometimes even into the 40s. Fredericton's high tomorrow, 30 degrees. 28 is the high for Charlottetown under sunny skies, a mix of sun and cloud expected in Halifax with a high of 20. There is a 40% chance of some drizzle tomorrow in St. John's, Newfoundland with a high of 15 degrees. There you go. That is your weather.
Huawei Technologies CEO Meng Wanzhou failed to persuade a Canadian judge to end extradition proceedings today. That will keep her under house arrest in Vancouver as the fight against U.S. efforts to prosecute her moves forward. The ruling marks an early victory for U.S. authorities, but it may likely strain relations between Canada and China. China is Canada's second largest trading partner. 2 Canadians, Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig, detained within days of Meng's arrest in December, also remain jailed in China. The U.S. claims Meng lied to banks and tricked them into processing more than $100 million in transactions through the U.S. in breach of sanctions. China called the allegations politically motivated and accused Canada of arbitrary detention. Mitsubishi is recalling 223,000 vehicles in Canada and 22 cold-weather U.S. states because suspension parts can rust, detach, and cause drivers to lose control. Officials say salt on roads in the wintertime can cause a crossmember to corrode on certain Outlander and Lancer models. It says that can cause front control arms, which let the wheels and tires travel up and down over bumps to fall off. Dealers will inspect the suspension and either replace the crossmembers or apply a sealant. The recall is to start on July 14th. The Parliamentary Budget Officer says a federal program giving commercial rent relief to small businesses could cost $520 million this year. Yves Giroux says assumptions in his report about industry eligibility and uptake by landlords rely heavily on judgment. He says that's because there is a lack of precedent for the program, which is part of Ottawa's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It also offers forgivable loans to cover half of monthly rents in April, May, and June, as long as landlords drop rents by at least 75% over the same period for eligible businesses. BMO Financial Group says its second quarter profit fell 54% as it sharply hiked its provision for credit losses. The bank says it had net earnings of $689 million. Now that is down from $1.5 billion a year ago. It says the total set aside for bad loans was $1.1 billion. That is up from $176 million in the same quarter last year due to the economic fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic. Adjusted earnings came in at $1.04 per share, missing analysts' expectations at $1.22. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 123 points in the day to 15,272. The Dow was up 553 points to 25,548. The S&P 500 was up 44 points to 3,036, and the Nasdaq was up 72 points to 9412. Oil was down $2.13 to $32.22 per barrel. Natural gas was down 7 cents to $1.72. Gold was up 44 cents to $17.0991 an ounce, and silver was up 7 cents to $17.33 an ounce. Wheat is at $240 per metric ton. Barley's also at $240. Canola's at $467, and corn is at $229 per metric ton. Live cattle were up $1.40 to $101. Feeder cattle were up 73 cents to $1.35, and lean hogs were down 33 cents to $62. The Canadian dollar was up slightly on the day to 72.74 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the NHL will be returning to a 24-team format. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman says training camps will open sometime in July, meaning if it lasts about 3 weeks, the season would likely resume in August. Now, as part of the announcement, Bettman said the regular season is complete and the teams will go into playoff mode right away. The Calgary Flames will take on the Winnipeg Jets in the opening round, while the Edmonton Oilers will be facing off against the Chicago Blackhawks in a best-of-5 affair. The list of hub cities where the games could be played would include Edmonton, Toronto, Vancouver, or Las Vegas. A recent report by the Parliamentary Budget Officer says the federal deficit will likely be $260 billion and climbing as the Justin Trudeau Liberals keep spending. Political reporter Brian Lilly will have the details in just a moment. The former top advisor to the Justin Trudeau Liberals, Gerald Butts, is back. Butts, who left government following the Jody Wilson-Raybould scandal, is part of a new task force called Resilient Recovery. Now, to chat more about it is our political reporter, Brian Lilly. Brian, this group will be made up of green industry and environmental leaders, not really potential friends to Alberta's energy sector.
No, nor much of Ontario's manufacturing sector, which Jerry Butts did his best to chase out of the province when he was part of the McGuinty Liberal government at the provincial level many years ago. This is not a government task force, but it is one being put together by green industry groups that hope to have the ear of the Prime Minister and his cabinet, and there's a good chance he will. Now, for anyone that thinks Jerry Butts left Ottawa, he didn't. He's lived there since he moved up. But he left official Ottawa. He's kind of been shunned. He hasn't really been around the cocktail circuit on Parliament Hill. He hasn't been showing up at committees and party functions. But now this group is going to try and influence the government. And his thinking and the thinking of this task force is very much in line with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, people like Environment Minister John Wilkinson, Stephen Guilbeault, the Heritage Minister, former Greenpeace activist, and perhaps most importantly, Infrastructure Minister Catherine McKenna, because what this group wants is not shovel-ready projects. You remember with every past recession, we would hear about shovel-ready projects. We'll get people back to work, shovels in the ground. No, they want shovel-worthy projects, Hal. And a shovel-worthy project is one that is, well, zero emissions or very low emissions. Definitely not a pipeline. Definitely not a steel plant, definitely not an automotive assembly plant, nothing like that, good, high-paying manufacturing or natural resources jobs. No, they want, building solar panels and the like. That's what they're going to be pushing, and they definitely will have the ear of the government, with Butts taking a lead role there.
Now, a group of academics and executives headed by the former Bank of Canada governor says Canada cannot afford to completely shut down the economy in the event of a second wave of the coronavirus. Brian, tell me more about this report from the C.D. Howe Institute.
It comes on the heels of another report by the Fraser Institute that says that we are spending far more than we did during the 2008-2009 recession brought about by the global financial crisis. We're spending more per capita than we did during the Second World War, of course, all adjusted for inflation. But this report from the C.D. Howe Institute looks and says, you know what, the way we're spending now, if we have another economic shutdown, we are toast. Now, just to add to this, the Parliamentary Budget Officer, because some people might say, oh, Fraser Institute, they're just right-wingers, they're funded by the Koch brothers, all the usual stuff. Or they might say that about the C.D. Howe Institute. They've been wrong. It's an institute named for a past Liberal finance minister, and it draws from all parties and all types. I mean, I know New Democrats, Conservatives, and Liberals who are part of that organization. But the Parliamentary Budget Officer, Hal, went before a Senate committee this week and said, we can't continue to do these programs. They must be temporary. And having a deficit that is equivalent of 12% of the GDP is just unsustainable, and we've got to fix it. So, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, you've got people saying we can't sustain this level of spending, especially without an economic recovery. You guys are getting towards that in Alberta. And definitely they're getting towards that of British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, but Ontario and Quebec remain problems. That's, the worst part for them is that the economic engine of both of those provinces, that being Toronto and Montreal, are the hot spots. And so it becomes difficult for the provinces, even if they open up the other parts, for there to be a full economic recovery, because the two biggest cities or the biggest city in each respective province is an epicenter and is much more dangerous for them to open up fully. So we're in for a rough ride here. But whether you're talking CD Howe, Fraser Institute, or Parliamentary Budget Officer, they all say the same thing. We can't keep going like this.
The government sends out record amounts of money, Brian, out the door. Social assistance recipients are being allowed to double dip. Now, thousands of Canadians on welfare and disability are also receiving the $2,000 a month payment.
Yeah, it's an interesting analysis done by a guy named Tom Blackwell. And he just called around, he looked at what all the provinces are doing, and it really depends on where you live. And what he found was you had some liberal provinces like Newfoundland and Labrador, they're clawing back the whole CERB. So if you're on social assistance in St. John's and you get the CERB, well, they claw back the whole amount. If you are in British Columbia or Northwest Territories or Yukon, you get to keep the whole amount. And then there's the middle of the road guys. That would be Alberta, Manitoba, Ontario, and I believe Quebec as well. They're clawing back a portion of the CERB if you're also on social assistance. So the feds would actually like you to just take the money. But look, as we discovered this week with the finding out that the federal parties, the three main ones anyway, are all taking the wage benefit, as I keep saying, there's nowhere that Justin Trudeau doesn't want to shove money during this pandemic. He wants everyone to have a bit of cash in their jeans, and it's really starting to feel like he is using this as a way to, campaign, curry favor with voters. Well, look at all the money I gave you. This is really setting him up well for the next election.
Brian, let's talk a bit more about the deficit once again. You mentioned earlier about the Parliamentary Budget Officer, and we have a lot of concerns about it. It's now likely to hit $260 billion and climbing due to the coronavirus.
Yeah, so that's up $10 billion. And jumping all over the place with these references, but there's so much worry about the money going out the door. And he had previously said, well, it'll be about $252 billion. Now they're saying $260 billion. We're going to see a national debt this year of $1 trillion. That is a milestone that we've never hit. It's not the type of milestone that we want to hit. We had gone down during the early part of the Harper years. Of course, we went back up in terms of national debts and deficits after the 2009 recession, started to go back down again. Justin Trudeau was pushing them up, but not in the ways that we're doing now. I thought that it was out of control spending, but now we're talking $260 billion deficit for this year alone. Every single day, he seems to come up with a new way to spend money. And at a certain point, you have to say, without a functioning economy, there is no way for the government to be able to do this. Yes, Canadians need help, but they also need to be able to know that they can get back to work and not face massive taxation at the end. By the way, Bill Morneau has said, we won't be raising taxes over this. Well, you're either going to raise taxes or cut spending. I have great difficulty believing that this is a government that will cut spending in any significant way. They're philosophically opposed to it in good times and in bad.
Could we maybe see a GST increase from 5 to 6 or even 7%, like back in the old days before?
Hey, wait. That's the reversal of the 2006 Harper election speech.
Right. Yeah. Brian, a disturbing report from the military given to the Ontario government on long-term health care, long-term care facilities. What did the report have to say?
This is deeply disturbing and shocking. And, I've been going over it for the past couple of days now, Hal. You remember that first Quebec and then Ontario called for military help because so many of their long-term care facilities were overwhelmed with COVID-19. Now, I want to make this clear. We've got more than 600 long-term care facilities. These aren't retirement homes. These are people who are getting somewhere between a retirement home and palliative care. You can't live on your own, but you're not at the hospital waiting to die. You've got medical problems, but you're still going to be around for a while, sort of thing. And more than 600 of them, the overwhelming majority have never had a single case of COVID-19, but there were a collection of them they tended to be the older homes with congregant living settings, ward rooms. And, the military went in during the worst of this. They sent a report in on May 14th. The Trudeau government, somebody sat on it for nearly 10 days because it was May 24th at 11:50 something, I'm told. Minutes before midnight, it was emailed to the Ford government. They got it. They really only looked at it on Monday. They responded to it on Tuesday. But what was in that report was shocking. Patients in one place allowed to wander. COVID positive patients allowed to get up out of their rooms and wander the home. In another home, they had big fans in the hallways blowing around, which could spread COVID-19. Majority of medication at the ward level expired, meaning, according to this report, people getting expired medication for months. Low levels of disinfection had been going on. In the middle of a pandemic, they were not disinfecting the rooms, buildup of fecal material in many rooms. It goes on and on and on. And what's disturbing, there's two things to me that are deeply disturbing about this. One, that it took more than 10 days for the federal government to notify the province that this report existed and that they should do something. Two, that the province won't admit that they must have known this. How could you know that the homes are so bad that you've got to call in the military? And nobody, whether it's the premier or the minister or somebody in the bureaucracy, Hal, had to know. There are people that have worked in this bureaucracy for years, for decades. They must have known. They have to be found. They have to be held to account on this.
Yeah, we must do better, absolutely. Brian, you've chatted with some epidemiologists looking at the numbers. Where is Canada overall in terms of handling the COVID-19 pandemic?
Doing much better. There's a thing called the R factor or R value. It depends on who you're talking to and the term that they use, but it's basically the reproduction value in terms of, okay, I get sick, Hal, I catch COVID-19. How many people do I infect? And in the early days of this pandemic, in some parts of the country, like Ontario, it could be as high as 10. So I could get infected and infect 10. They say on average it was 2.3. Well, now it's down to below 1 across Canada. Ontario, it bubbles up and down between just below 1 and just above 1. And so the other day it was 1.1. But overall in Canada, it's 0.96. So just less than one new person gets infected. When you get to that level, the virus starts to die off. So that is the good news. And as much as you might hear about new cases in Ontario or new cases in Quebec, and, are we still getting too many? Or those idiots in the park in Toronto. If we're getting to the point where we're infecting fewer people, that is a good thing. The number of hospitalizations, down. The number of people on ventilators or in intensive care, all down. These are all the good news signals that we can look to. And when you look at the fact that provinces like yours and your neighbor, British Columbia never fully closed down. It was probably far more open than the rest of the country. We still haven't seen levels come back up there, despite loosening of restrictions. And we have been loosening restrictions for the last week or so in Ontario, and we haven't seen a big spike. We've seen little blips, but not a big spike yet. So these are all positive signs that I think that we can look to and say, okay, we're not out of the woods, but we are headed in the right direction.
Brian, legislation is coming from the Liberals that will effectively ban handguns in cities. Now, the feds say they're going to work directly with the cities and completely ignore the provinces. How's that going to work?
Yeah, well, I'd love to know the details on this, but Bill Blair doesn't really like taking my calls. He doesn't like answering my questions because I tend to have tough questions for Bill Blair. I'm never rude. I'm not a jerk to him. But Bill Blair knows that I have a clue what I'm talking about when it comes to firearms. He did, however, speak to the very liberal-friendly Toronto Star about this and dished a bunch of details without enough detail for you to be able to criticize it. One of those leaks, if you remember from your days on the Hill, oh, you slip something to a friendly reporter. That's kind of what they did here. And they're saying they're going to make it so that they'll let cities declare that it's illegal to store a handgun within their city limits. So it's not illegal to own it. You can be a resident of Toronto and still own a handgun, but you can't store it in Toronto. Okay, well, where are you going to store it? You're either going to have to store it at a cottage or a friend's house or somewhere else, that becomes difficult. And they're basically trying to harass people out of civilian ownership of handguns, which is strange because the real problem are smuggled guns coming across the border, whether we're talking about people that just drive across to Buffalo, Niagara Falls, New York, or they smuggle them across at the reserve that straddles Ontario, Quebec, and New York State. We know that that is a smuggling hotbed. Everybody knows about it, talks about it. So these are the real problems, and the government's doing nothing about that, and they're trying to focus on this. But as far as dealing directly with cities, expect pushback from several provinces, including Ontario and Alberta and Saskatchewan on this, because in my view, that would actually be unconstitutional.
Political reporter with the Toronto Sun, Brian Lilly, thanks again for your time today.
Thank you, Hal.
Today's society puts a lot of pressure on young girls to have outward beauty. The Photoshop beauty pics on glossy magazines likely contribute to that. But what about beauty on the inside, which I feel is a lot more important? Joining me now in studio to talk about it is Renee Peterson. She's a registered nurse and the founder of the Beautiful Inside Academy. Welcome back to BCN, Renee.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Beautiful Inside Academy, what is it all about?
Well, Beautiful Inside Academy is something that I'm so deeply passionate about. I have been running this academy for 13 years, and it's a sacred place for young women to come and to have the exploration of that inner self, to develop those inner tools, inner strategies, inner mindsets to launch them to the next level of who they say they want to be. So, yeah.
Why is beauty on the inside so important?
Well, I believe that once you're connected to that place, I mean, you know as well as I do, right? You talk to someone, you see them, and then what actually comes out of them is what makes them actually truly beautiful. And so I think when they truly identify it on the inside, it just really helps them even appreciate the external even more, and just helps them connect to the beauty of their life, the beauty of who they can be, the beauty in others. So it's just fun, foundational work as far as I'm concerned.
I have a daughter who's 21 years of age. She's a beautiful young woman, inside and outside. And when she was younger, the preteen, sometimes the awkward years, she would always say, I'm not good enough, I'm not beautiful enough, and I'm encouraging her, loving her, praying for her. I'm like, yes, you are, you're beautiful. But it didn't resonate with her. No matter what her mother or I said, it was like almost strangers saying, you're beautiful. Oh, I must be beautiful. Right. But when mom and dad said it didn't really resonate with her. Why do you think that is?
Well, I know it's kind of that adolescent brain, right? Like they just thinking, you're my parents, you have to love me, you have to say that about me. And they're already in that identity kind of questioning, going, who am I worthy, am I lovable, am I enough? And so that's where I tell the parents, hey, that's okay, that's normal. It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong, but that's where I come in and I get to partner with you as a mom, partner with you as a dad, and support you in installing those beliefs that you so wish that your daughter would have at that time in her life. And so, yeah, it does. I actually kind of love it because it's just like I can also help make the relationship better. They're like, oh, wow, yeah, my mom says that or my dad says that. And so, okay, yeah, maybe that does have some clout. So it's really kind of magical at the same time as I do that inner work with them, help bridge and build those beautiful connections and foundations with parents as well.
So self-confidence is also very important, vital for our young people today, especially young girls. But social media can sometimes wreak havoc on a lot of young girls and their confidence.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, we're in this age where everything's blowing up, and parents are parenting in an age of social media that we've never experienced before, right? So you look at TikTok, the predators, the research all around that stuff. And so along with that, yeah, I mean, we have so many filters now on social media. And so these young women are seeing these images and thinking everybody's perfect. And that's a word that I hear a lot in my academy. Well, perfect, or this is perfect, or I look over at her, right? And so it's just really helping them disconnect from some of that. And like I tell them, you run your own race. Like get like the blinders on like a horse, and what are you focused on, and who do you want to be? And when you're looking over here and comparison, because that's what that breeds, as well as it also breeds like bullying. And so people just think, oh, well, I can say something behind a screen and well, whatever. And so the pain that happens, or that they've learning how to communicate, right? They're not learning this face-to-face or the power of communication. And so it's just this back and forth all on the media sites.
So how do you really explain, Renee, to a young person that what these trolls are saying on Twitter or Instagram is really irrelevant?
Yeah, well, it's And
it's
it
not
is
that important.
True. And I think it
It's keyboard warriors, right?
Well, yeah, right. That's very well said. And so I think what it boils down to is I really help them see, like, that through the mindset work, that they get to decide what they believe. And so I teach them to ask those pertinent questions and to not, and once again, to take their focus off of that. Like, why would you spend so many hours trolling anyways and giving your time and energy to that? And so where do you want your focus to be, and who do you want to be, and where do you want your time to be? And then they're kind of like, oh yeah, well, that drains me to be doing that. And so just helping them develop those success habits and those strategies to not even be as tempted to go there.
How important is it for a young girl to have a mentor?
I think it's huge. I think it's everything. Like, I think you look at the resiliency model, and I think that our teenagers, they need a team. Like, if they need a counselor, great, let's get them in for a counselor. If they need a coach, let's get them with a coach. Like, let's buoy them up and support them in any way that they can. So they need that person that can be strong enough to also not buy into the lies that they're believing about themselves, or also buy into some of their manipulation, right? Where they're just kind of like, oh, well, that's how it is. But someone who's a strong, confident woman who can look at them and go, no, I'm going to actually challenge you on that. I'm going to stand in this space with you. I'm going to hold grace for you, and I'm going to hold you to a higher level of who I know you say you want to be. And then they're like, oh, okay.
Are there certain limits of what a mentor can and cannot do? And the reason I ask that, as a parent myself, a lot of times my kids would want to go down a certain path. I know this path will lead to destruction. Yeah. They're going to fall flat on their face because I went down a similar path when I was their age. Yeah. It's like, guys, it's not going to end well for you, right? So please don't go down the path, but you still have to let go, let God, let them do it. And sometimes they fail. It's like, oh my goodness. They're like, you know what? Dad, Mom, you were right.
Right.
So with a mentor, do you have to allow them to go through a similar path, similar experience?
Well, yeah, like, I mean, I can mentor them through those things, but if that's who they're saying they don't want to be, like, I don't know, it seems like I have some clout there, right? And so I'm not saying that they don't make mistakes, and sometimes failure is our greatest teacher, right? So I say to my girls, it's not about failing, but it's about never quitting. And so, like, what do you learn from those mistakes? And so, yeah, I mean, helping them understand that, hey, these will be the choices, but the choices also have consequences. You can make the choice, but you also don't get to choose the consequence. And so I think when you explain it to them in certain ways and help them see bigger picture, sometimes they do take a step back. And I mean, really, let's be honest, right? Because as parents, when we're saying don't do this, don't do that, when they're trying to assert their independence and they want to find their way, they feel like by saying, well, I'm going to do that, right? They feel like that's
sometimes in rebellion. Perhaps,
in rebellion, right?
Yeah.
But I think as a coach and somebody who can support a parent and saying, okay, well, I understand why your mom would say that, because let's have a look at this. This is how this could play itself out. And then, you know, get them out of that defiance, but get them more into alliance. And then they're kind of like, okay, I do want to do that. What's good for me?
Renee, how can we give our girls more of the tools they need to succeed in life today?
Well, I believe that's part of sending them to me.
There you go.
But I do believe, like, as parents today, what I kind of see as a weakness is that we want to be their friends, right? We want them to like us, and we're so much invested in wanting them to like us that sometimes it's hard for us to step in our full empowerment and say, okay, I want you to look at this. I want to challenge that mindset. Or if they're complaining and being in complete victim mode all the time, instead of us trying to fix it and make it better, to just actually, as a mom, as a dad, you know, be in our own sense of self and go, okay, well, I get that. You can choose to continue to think that. But then this is how you're going to continue to feel. So you get to decide.
You know, it's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, Renee, because a lot of times as a dad, I'm a problem solver. I want to fix it.
Totally.
And then my wife says, no, you're not supposed to fix it. Just leave it alone. But I want to. I want to help. I know I can help, right?
Right.
And so that's frustrating for me sometimes as a father.
Yeah. But it's also not about stepping back, because sometimes I see parents just step away and they'll be like, oh, well, they're 18, they're 16. I guess they got to just learn it. And I don't buy into that philosophy either. I buy into, okay, I am that person, and I'm going to stand there in that space, and I'm going to hold that space for them. And if they're going to cry and whine or whatever, then I'm just going to still be there, and I'm still going to coach them through it and just be like, hey, well, you get to choose, or how could you get yourself out of that, or how could you think of that differently, or what else could that mean? So as that parent standing in that space and not letting them be the victim, or not letting them manipulate you, right? Or as a parent going, okay, wow, that's bringing up my childhood thing that I wanted to fit in, so maybe I'm compromising and letting my daughter, you know, go do these things because I didn't get to do those things. And so it's a whole complexity. And so I work with parents and teenage girls to kind of just help them create the tapestry of that beautiful relationship and how to dance together. So.
How can we help our young people today learn how to develop good habits, not bad habits?
Well, I mean, I think that takes, as a parent, modeling it as well, right? I mean, how much time as a parent do we spend on social media and wasting our time and energy? Or, you know, how much of time as parents do they see us like not getting up or laying our stuff out the night before, or using a day timer, or being committed to our goals, committed to our dreams, committed to our personal work? So a lot of it is modeling. And then that's where I just love getting our kids and our teenage girls, especially in front of people like me that can say, hey, these are decisions of destiny, and if you start implementing this, or how are you going to think about this, or carve out that spiritual time for yourself so that you can really be connected on the inside, so that you can be full of purpose, and that you can, you know, when something comes, you can have been like, okay, no, I know how I'm going to handle that, or this is my goal, or this is my focus. So it really all starts internally, and so getting them really connected to those places, and as parents, you know, carving out that space and that energy and those discussions around that. So
Are you a parent yourself?
I absolutely
How many
am.
kids?
I have 2 beautiful daughters. So,
Okay.
Yes.
So tell me about some of the challenges you faced as a parent with 2 young, beautiful women.
Yeah. Well, they're 25 and 23 now. So.
Okay. Maybe many years ago.
Many years ago.
Maybe 15,
yeah,
you know, 15, 18 years ago.
But really, I think for them, sometimes I've gone back and said to them, you know, how did you do this, or why this? And I mean, it was because I
What worked and what didn't, right?
Totally, yeah. And it was because I modeled it. I mean, they saw me, and I'm not perfect. And if I wasn't perfect at something, I definitely would admit that and say, okay, well, let's work on this together, or this will be something that will really move us forward. And we kind of get the family on board. And I mean, it was just the 3 of us for 17 years. So yeah, it's just really boils down to what are you going to put into practice as a family on a day-to-day basis, and having those discussions about what it really does mean to be successful. And
did you use some of those experiences as a parent to model some of the programs with Beautiful Inside Academy?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tell me about some of those programs that you offer.
Well, I do group coaching. So I run a group coaching academy for 13 weeks twice a year. And I do private one-on-one coaching with teenage girls all year long. I also do events and have been working with moms, and have been coaching some moms as well. So how can we do that? How can we help our relationship with our daughter better? So that's a lot of what I'm offering right now.
What advice would you give to a lot of moms today to really strengthen that relationship with their daughters?
Okay, I love that question. So the question I often put forth to my moms is, who do you need to be so she can be who she needs to be? And so it is like Dr. Christian Northrup kind of talks about it like this. It's kind of like osmosis. So when we're engaged in personal work, when we're modeling healthy relationships, when we're modeling healthy self-talk, when we're modeling healthy body image, so all of those things. So my coaching with the moms is like, where are those areas where you still feel that you need to up level, or those areas that you see in your daughter that she's struggling? Does she mirror that from you as well? And so it's not about shaming or blaming. It's just about this exciting exploration of how can we heal that within us as moms, so that automatically can give our daughters a different launching pad.
How can we help our daughters achieve their full potential in life?
Well, I truly believe it's mindset work. It's not being the victim. It's like really helping them.
Being the victor, right?
Yeah, exactly. Being the victor and unpacking what are those gifts, and what is your purpose, and what are those decisions of destiny, and how to give them those inner strength and those inner tools when those storms come, and to not be seeking so much external validation, but teaching them how to validate from within, and teaching them how to connect to their spiritual source, and teaching them how to access, you know, all of those giftings on the inside, and then we'll see what strong young women do, right? Like right now I have...
And they could be mentors to other young women, right?
Absolutely.
I've been where you are.
Totally.
Let me show you the way.
Absolutely. And that's kind of my mission. Like I have 19 powerhouse teenage girls in my academy right now, and I just was like, you watch out for them, because these are our future leaders.
That's awesome. Now you have mother-daughter events as well. Tell me a bit about those.
Yeah, I do. So lots of times I'll have the moms, and then I'll have mothers and daughters come together, and it's just about how do we really strengthen this relationship? How do we bond together? Because at the end of the day, like it is such a sacred, beautiful relationship. And I know for me, being a mom has just been one of the greatest gifts, and one of the things that I just want to shout from the rooftops that I feel like I've been able to do so well. And so bringing them together in that space of honor, and just having the girls understand that this woman right beside you. I mean, she was your age once too, and they're like, really? It's like, oh, I never thought of it that way, right? But, you know, it's like, access her wisdom, like, let her speak into your life. Or girls, you know, how can you look at this differently, you know, when your mom's telling you, hey, this is what I want for you. And then just teaching the moms how to talk to the girls and just doing a lot of that work so that they can see each other a little bit more clearly.
What can parents learn from their kids?
So much.
Because I mean, as parents,
yeah.
we like to teach our kids lots,
Yeah.
right? So.
Well, I think that our kids are our greatest teachers. And so the wounding or the things that they're dealing with, it's just like, and the way they're reacting, sometimes it does have something to do with us. It has to do with like, okay, well, how have I allowed that behavior? You know, what do I need to heal in me? Or like, for example, like when my daughter turned 18, you know, I was just like a lot more paranoid because that's where some stuff had happened to me. And so, but yet that was a gift because it was like, okay, Mama Bear, time to heal that. And so then I can graciously say to my daughter, wow, I'm realizing this. And sorry if I've been like overprotective, but, and then that bonded us closer together. And so it's just a beautiful, beautiful mirror if we choose to look at it that way.
Renee Peterson with Beautiful Insight Academy, thanks so much for joining me in studio today.
Thank you.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks so much for watching.